World champions in EV adoption, Norway leads the charge to electromobility, while in Germany, the roads are still full of diesel and gas-powered cars. Last year, close to 90% of all new cars bought in Norway were electric vehicles. In Germany, EVs accounted for barely 14% of new car sales. Why the huge difference? Can Germany catch up soon? And how?
In 2025, we will celebrate reaching a climate goal.
Well, almost. The goal was for 100% of all new cars sold in Norway this year to be EVs. But even reaching almost 90% makes Norway the world leader and earned its EV lobbyist a place on Time magazine's list of the world's 100 climate leaders.
We have a very clean city. The air is fresh. And now what I recently noticed is also that in winter, when we have snow, in the end of the day, that snow is still white.
Meanwhile, in Germany, emissions-free vehicles have yet to take off. Here, just 3% of the cars on the road are battery electric. In Norway, it's over a quarter. Industry structures could play a role. Germany has a large and to date highly successful auto industry. Norway doesn't, an advantage when it comes to electrification.
Weil es nicht so sehr Arbeitsplätze und die bestehende Automobilindustrie geht wie bei uns. Gerade auch in der Produktion der Verbrennungsmotoren ja immer noch sehr viele Arbeitsplätze dranhängen. Diese Debatten hat man halt in Norwegen so nicht so. Das macht, glaube ich, vieles im politischen Diskurs auch einfacher.
Even the German government can't agree on what drive technology to back. Some parties want automakers to be free to keep developing buses that run on biofuel and hydrogen cars and trucks. A counterproductive strategy, says this energy researcher.
Das bremst auch die Transformation. Also da wäre es wünschenswert, dass wir aufhören, über so Wunderkerzen und Feenstaub wie E-Fuels zu reden, die auf absehbare Zeit viele Jahre keinerlei Rolle im Straßenverkehr spielen werden.
Cuts to Germany's budget also led the outgoing government to slash financial incentives for EV purchases. Car makers felt the effects right away.
When those purchase incentives were reversed for electric vehicles, we saw an immediate drop of the market, which tells you that it's not a natural demand yet. It's not a self-propelling market.
And that lack of demand for EVs has plunged German automakers into crisis. Volkswagen had already converted its Zwickau plant in Saxony to build electric cars. Now, contract workers there are being laid off. Yet the Zwickau factory produces VW's ID4 and ID3 models. Just the kinds of EVs that are highly prized in Norway. At least that's what this Volkswagen importer says.
We have the range from Volkswagen with the ID4, ID5, ID Bus, and now also the ID7 with 4x4. That's essential. So I think now we have really a good balance where we can really serve a big customer group in Norway.
But how did Norway make electric vehicles so attractive? We asked EV lobbyist Christina Bu.
First of all, Norway has used their tax system to not have tax on electric cars for many years. Now there's a bit tax, but also putting higher and higher taxes on petrol and diesel engine cars. So that's the main reason why we have succeeded.
The tax breaks won over this family from Oslo. 4 years ago, they bought a Tesla, much to their children's delight.
You can watch TV in it, like Netflix, YouTube, and you can play games.
And while the first generation of EVs struggled to cope with cold Norwegian winters, those days are long gone.
Earlier, when they had the first cars, I remember riding with a colleague where we went to and from work sometimes, and you had to turn off the heater in the winter time to make the battery last enough to get all the way home.
But the new generation of EVs has batteries powerful enough to deal with the Nordic weather. So switching to an electric car was worth it, not just for the tax breaks, but for the other perks too.
For example, here's the bus line right next to us right now. And now there's a sign where it says we can't drive there Monday through Friday. So it was a great way to just like jump the queue basically.
EV drivers are no longer so privileged. Now they're only free to use Oslo's bus lanes on weekends. And luxury EVs with a price tag of over 500,000 Norwegian kroner no longer qualify for tax breaks. That's because funding electric mobility is an expensive proposition. Over the last 18 years, the Norwegian state has waived the equivalent of around 55 billion euros in tax revenue to promote electric vehicles. That's a lot of money, though not for Norway. In 2024 alone, the state received the equivalent of more than 60 billion euros in oil revenue, more than enough to pay for its entire EV promotion scheme. So essentially, Norway can afford to promote clean mobility because it earns a fortune drilling for and selling dirty oil and gas. Which leads us to ask, can Germany, with its current budget deficit, afford to offer such generous subsidies as Norway?
Die Förderhöhe pro Elektrofahrzeug lag viele Jahre bei den Neukaufen bei mehr als 10.000 Euro pro Fahrzeug. Das heißt, wenn man da über hier in Deutschland mehrere Millionen Elektrofahrzeuge, die man im Bestand haben möchte, nachdenkt, dann ist man sehr schnell bei Milliardenbeträgen.
Because the country's car markets are very different. Based on numbers alone, there were already more EVs on German roads a year ago than there are in Norway today. This apparent contradiction is explained by the size of their markets. With roughly 50 million cars, Germany's market is around 16 times larger than Norway's. To promote EVs in such a big market, gas guzzlers must cost more, says Patrick Plutz.
Bei der Dieselsteuer, aber auch bei der Dienstwagenbesteuerung könnte man da einiges korrigieren. Das würde gleichzeitig Elektrofahrzeuge attraktiver machen. Das wären sicher zwei große Hebel.
But are higher taxes for cars with combustion engines politically feasible? In Germany, many jobs still depend on the production of vehicles that run on gasoline or diesel. By contrast, Norway doesn't have a domestic auto industry. It imports all of its cars from countries like the US, Germany, and China. The tiny Norwegian market is highly competitive. It's seen as a harbinger of the coming EV market in the EU. Chinese brands also figure prominently here. Tesla is still the best-selling single brand, but taken together, Volkswagen Group, whose brands include VW, Porsche, Audi, and Skoda, sells more. Altogether, Chinese newcomers have a 9% market share, plus Volvo, which is now also Chinese-owned.
What we see now with the Chinese in Norway is that budget cars, smaller cars where we do not have the cars yet, but we are getting them next year with the ID.2, for instance, or the Epic from Skoda, or the Raval from Cupra. There we can really then target also the Chinese in the small car segments.
Buyers profit from the price war being fought by EV manufacturers and from electric cars' low operating costs, because Norway also produces its own green hydroelectric power. So electricity is relatively cheap in Norway, though the price varies according to the region and time of day. Like many EV owners, the Essens have an app to help them save money.
Yesterday the car was completely empty, and then I chose to charge it up to 80%, and now it's full. And then I can choose also here when to start the charging, and that's really relevant because the electricity is of course cheaper in the night, so we always start it in the middle of the night.
Norwegian traffic researchers have calculated that the total cost of ownership for an electric car is even lower than for a used gas-powered one. The only stress factor for these EV fans is searching for a place to charge it. While that's never a problem at home in Norway, it is when they take their Tesla to visit family in Germany.
We're really stressed, so no, it's a big difference from to Norway here. It's definitely so much better here because it's in kind of every corner that you can charge. Whereas in Germany, it's really hard to find those points. So there's still a way to go there.
Räckviddeangst. It's the fear of not having enough battery to get where you want to. So yeah.
But is range anxiety really a thing?
Zur Infrastruktur muss man aber, glaube ich, grundsätzlich sagen, das wird in der öffentlichen Debatte oft ein bisschen übertrieben. Also es wird oft argumentiert, ja, wenn wir nur genug Ladesäulen bauen, dann geht das schon mit der Elektromobilität. Das ist wissenschaftlich, empirisch kaum nachweisbar.
By the end of 2024, Germany had around 34,000 fast charging stations, 4 times as many as Norway. Though per capita, Germany has far fewer in comparison, and car manufacturers say Norway has done a better job of building the relevant infrastructure.
They have actually followed that very integrated approach from the outset, making sure the charging infrastructure is in place. If the rest of Europe, including Germany, could do what Norway have done, we would be in a very different situation.
Because the European auto industry finds itself in a very tough spot. Flagging EV sales mean the EU will likely miss its targets for reducing CO2 emissions and incur heavy fines as a result.
The magnitude is about 16 billion euros potentially in fines. We now need a relief, but we also need a reality check to make it happen in a way that's feasible and manageable for industry, for consumers, for societies and for economies.
Europe's car industry wants the EU to lower its EV adoption goals for financial reasons. But wouldn't that just slow down the shift to electric mobility? The competition is charging ahead regardless.
This technology shift is happening whether you like it or not. So European car manufacturers just have to ask themselves, do they want to be part of this technology change or not? Or will we, as Europe, let China take over the whole market?
So what's gone wrong in Germany? Are the EVs too costly or the models not right? Is the infrastructure lacking? Energy prices too high? Has political flip-flopping put buyers off? What can cash-strapped Germany do to emulate Norway's successful policies?
Definitiv lernen von den Norwegern können wir konsequent den Weg der Elektromobilität zu gehen und niemals politischen Zweifel daran aufkommen zu lassen, dass das der richtige Weg ist. Und wir sollten uns sputen, sonst wird die deutsche Automobilindustrie den Anschluss einfach an den Weltmarkt verlieren.
And that could end up costing the German auto industry even more jobs in the long run.